Namaste, welcome to the course of Introduction to Mechanical Engineering. In today's session, we try to understand a milling machine and the principles of milling machine. In common, the milling machine has been classified or categorized into two. One is horizontal milling machine and second one is vertical milling machine. Let's try to go through that. What does this horizontal milling machine look like, and how do this vertical milling machine look like, and what are their main important component, and why do we call them an horizontal and why do we call this as a vertical milling machine? So right now, the sketch that you're gonna witness is all about a horizontal milling machine. We can see over here, we do have a certain important components that I mentioned over here, like overarm, armor, arbor, cutting tool, and a base. The important thing to notice is over here is few element which categorize this as a horizontal milling machine, in which arbor is one such element or a space where the cutting tool is been held firmly in position. Next one is the cutter or the cutting tool, which rotates on the axis of an arbor. And the question is, why do we call this as an horizontal milling machine? As you can see this, the axis is parallel to the base. Therefore, henceforth, we call this machine or identifying this machine saying that it is an horizontal milling machine. Let's try to look into how do this vertical milling machine look like. So, right now the screen that you're going to see is of vertical milling machine, and by now you would have made out or make out that the difference in horizontal and a vertical milling machine. Here, the axis is perpendicular to the base. Henceforth, it's vertical. This is the reason why we call this as a vertical milling machine. Now, the thing is, what do this milling machine does? What happens in a milling machine? It's all about the workpiece is fed towards the cutting tool. Cutting tool which rotates on its own axis, as I said that, arbor axis, and the material is been removed from the surface, right? I do repeat, the workpiece is fed towards the cutter. Cutter is to rotate all along the axis of its arbor, and the material is removed from the surface. This is what the milling machine does to acquire certain shape and size. Now, let's make out or try to understand what are the principles behind this milling machine. Again, there are two. One is up milling and another one is down milling. Let's try to understand how do this up milling look like and how does this down milling look like, and what happens or why do we use this up milling and a down milling. First one, let's come out with an up milling. As you can see here, it's a cutter, right? And you can see the cutter and a workpiece, right? The first point is all about that. Here, the cutter rotates against the feed direction. In other way, the rotation of the cutter and the movement of the workpiece are in opposite direction. You can see over here in the animation that the workpiece is rotating on its own axis, but the workpiece is moving towards the cutter rotation. That's how the whole thing happens up over here. By doing this, yes, the chips have been removed from the surface from 0 to the higher thickness. As you could see, here I marked out how the chips looks like, and they are in larger size in form. And the surface is, by doing this operation, the surface is rough enough. I do repeat, the rotation of cutter and direction of the workpiece is of opposite direction. The chips removed from the surface will be bigger in size, and here the surface is rough. Let's try to understand how do this down milling look like. As you could see over here, again the same cutter and a workpiece, right? But here, one thing to be noticed over here. Here, as if in a up milling, the rotation and the movement of the workpiece is in opposite direction, but in this down milling, the rotation and movement of the workpiece are in the same direction. You can see in the animation quite clearly that the rotation of a cutter being rotating all over the axis of the arbor, and the workpiece is moved towards the rotation. By doing this, yes, the surface, the thickness of the chips, as you could see over here, from the thicker size to 0,1. Thenceforth, the small sized chips are removed from the surface, and the surface states to be finished. Here, the surface that we could make out is of finishing surface. The all around, the summary is all about types of milling machine, two types, horizontal milling machine, vertical milling machine, On principles of milling machine, up milling and down milling, let me make a point that up milling, the rotation of a cutter and the movement of a workpiece in opposite direction, and in a down milling, the rotation of a cutter and the movement of a table are in the same direction. Thank you.